now we look at this idea of entering into hooks and rear mounted positions. We've seen that as a general rule I tend to favor low amplitude methods with maximal body contact, minimal ability on the part of my opponent to just stand up out of the move. These are the most high percentage ways for us to work. We've made a division between entering with the knee, which is generally the easier one for most athletes and the safer one in the most applications, versus entering with the foot. Now please don't think that I'm saying you shouldn't enter with the foot. That's absolutely not the case. There are many good times to enter with the foot, and there are many benefits to entering with the foot. Remember, if I enter with the foot first, the hook is now complete. There's nothing else to be done. If I enter with the knee, then I have to extend the leg and establish the hook. It's kind of a two-part move. So there are real advantages to entering with the foot. They tend to be smoother, faster entries. Anytime I can operate with maximal body contact and a broken down opponent, I'm going to favor foot entries because they are faster and smoother. But I'm not going to favor them in uncontrolled situations where my opponent's not broken down and I have to sacrifice body contact. That's the rule that I'm pushing towards you. Now, let's look at a tight waist breakdown that creates an exceptionally good opportunity for a foot-based entry, and this is an excellent way for you guys to begin training your body to enter with the foot first under the right kinds of conditions. We're going to start off turtle position, and we're going to show the same kind of tight waist breakdown that we've been looking at all day. The key elements to the tight waist breakdown are first the establishment of the tight waist itself. We go in, and the primary focus is on my elbow or my wrist at the hip. Doesn't matter whether I use wrist or elbow. I'm demonstrating out of an elbow, but from here it's the elbow that does the work. Now I transition my body across his, and my left knee goes from his left hip to his right hip, and as a result I'm able to pull him over. I get to a certain point where I can feel his balance is broken. I withdraw my knee and I break him down to a hip just like so. Okay, now everything we've done so far has been off this, the seat belt. We're going to keep a strong chest to back contact on my training partner, but I'm not going to lock a seat belt. Okay, instead I'm going to focus on taking my elbow and gluing it to my training partner's hip. Now if my opponent was an idiot and just stayed where he is, okay, didn't move, well, I would just do the move we saw previously. I would just slide my knee in, I'd take his back. Okay, or I could just go straight into a stranglehold right from here. You could do many good things. Okay, but let's assume our opponent's not an idiot. Let's assume he's at least as good as we are, and quite possibly better. So in situations like this, he's going to look to return to a turtle position. When I hold my elbow tight to my own body, there's only one way he can return to a turtle position. I know that before we even begin the move. He's going to have to scissor his legs. If he just tries to flip up to his turtle position, my elbow will prevent him. The only mechanical way he can do it is to scissor his legs. That's the only method strong enough to get up against my elbow. Go back. Again, if he just tries to just turn naively up, my elbow will stop him in his tracks. Okay, you can't see this on camera because my elbow's not moving, but I'm pulling my elbow back hard into his hips. Okay, so he goes to get up, go. It's not going to do it. The only way he can do it, it's mechanically efficient, is to scissor his legs. Now he gets up, scissors, yep, now he can do it. Okay, and he got up. Okay, so the resistance of my elbow pull means there's only one way he can get back up to his base. No other method mechanically will do it. Okay, there's other things he can do. He can hit a sit out from wrestling. There's other things he can do, but for now, returning to turtle position, he's got to scissor his legs, and that's exactly what you want to take advantage of. So, from a situation where we start off behind our training partner, we start off with that tight waist, and we break him down. I see him trying to scissor and come back up. Okay. From here, my leg comes forward and my foot enters. My whole shin is along the mat. That way I keep my body contact with him. So as he returns to a turtle position, my hook goes in. Now I've established my right hook and I'm in the perfect position to take diagonal control so that when we fall, we've got our first hook established and we can start going into the second hook. I'm going to demonstrate that now on the other side so you can see, face the other way, what was going on there. So from a turtle situation, we start off behind our training partner, we go in, we use the tight waist breakdown. I glue my elbow in tight. If he's an idiot and stays right where he is, we'll just go straight into the moves we saw previously. Okay? Now from here he goes to get up, I glue the elbow in. Okay? As he goes to work, going up, look at my foot, just go straight in. and we've established that first hook. Now, as good as one hook is, it's only one side of his body that's controlled. I need both sides. The fastest way is always diagonal control. We lock it in, and now we're in the perfect position. Wherever we go, it doesn't matter, to break our opponent down and end up in a fine attacking position. Let's have a look at that again. We start off, tight waist breakdown, in tight. We go in behind our training partner, we break him down to a hip. I use that elbow pressure. If he decides to get it naively, he'll never do it. So he's got to scissor the legs. The action of scissoring the legs creates the space I need to slide my hook in. Okay? As a result, I can go in and score that diagonal control. It means that no matter which direction he goes, you'll always be stuck behind your opponent, ready to attack in the fashions that we favor. This method of using a foot entry is probably the single best way to train your mind and your body to efficiently enter in a way which is highly effective and very safe. You'll see that one of the key notes is that at no point did I start picking legs up and throwing hooks in. That's always a disaster, okay? Rather, we used a knee along the floor and we slid the whole length of the shin in as a hook, okay? So turtle position, facing this way. What we don't want to see with foot entries is this kind of thing. Picking a leg up and stepping in, okay? Or even worse, picking a leg up and stepping a leg in. It's just a disaster. So from situations where I break someone down, when he goes to get up, look how from here the whole leg slides in. And as a result, we're in perfect position now to score the far wrist, break our training partner down, and from here we've got the perfect attacking position ready to go. This means of working our foot in is it's not only beautiful to look at, but it's incredibly efficient mechanically, and it's a hallmark of good athletes attacking the back. They can effortlessly play between knee entries and foot entries. They know when to use which and what are the conditions for success or failure with each. We're looking at the idea of establishing hooks, working our way into the rear mounted position, typically against a turtle situation, but we'll be looking at others fairly shortly. We're looking now at this idea of entering with our feet. We're seeing as a basic choice between entering the hook with the knee versus entering with the foot. We're looking now at this idea of what are the right conditions to enter with the foot. Well, typically it's best done from broken down positions where my opponent is trying to climb back to a turtle position, rather than one where my opponent is in a settled, strong turtle position. Then you have to kind of pick legs up and throw hooks in. It's better to enter with the knee under those circumstances. I want to demonstrate an important point now, which is the idea of using two legs to establish one hook. We saw earlier how to do this with a knee. We saw that if we have an opponent facing in this direction, and we have a seatbelt grip, and our knee has entered in like so. When we use a sagging entry, we saw the idea of stepping over our opponent's foot. And so two of my legs control one of my opponent's legs. And as a result, when we broke our opponent down, there was a tremendously effective pinch around our training partner's legs. So that when he tried to move his right leg, it's pinched by both of mine, one from the back and one from the front. And as a result, it was incredibly easy for us to control that transition into the hooks. Okay? We can do much the same thing when we work with foot entries, but it's got a slightly different feel to it. What we're going to do is we're going to use one of our legs to pin our opponent's leg at the hamstring muscle, and this will radically slow your opponent's leg down and greatly facilitate the foot entry of your other leg. This can be done in many ways. Whenever I see someone who's truly a master of entering into the back, I'm always struck by the beauty and effectiveness when they apply moves like this. It makes entering the back look so effortless, and it can do the same thing for you if you just know what you're doing. Let's look at a situation where I've broken my training partner down. We'll demonstrate out of a tight waist situation just as we've been using, and we break our training partner down. As I see him go to recover position, we know that we use the elbow to slow him down. Anything that slows down his movement is money in the bank. It's good. Okay? As he comes up, look how I take my left knee and shin and I sit on the back of his knee and hamstring. so that if my training partner tried to bring his knee to his elbow, it's blocked by my body weight. If my leg wasn't there, he could bring the knee forward, close the space, and now it's very hard for me to get the foot in. Moreover, he can move much more athletically. There's nothing holding him back. Okay, go back. So from the breakdown position, one of my favorite tactics here is to keep my left knee low. Just freeze. My left knee is right at my training partner's tailbone. So that as my training partner goes to get up, I put weight over the hamstring muscle. As he fights to get up to his base, it plays a role like a brake on my training, like a handbrake on my training partner's leg. When he tries to go to get up, I just bring my head forward and my leg goes in effortlessly. If I didn't do that and my opponent had quick reaction speed, as his right leg comes up, I missed the opportunity to get my foot in. That wasn't very fast. So he's going to bring his right knee to his elbow. Okay, as he goes to get up, now I'm too slow and I couldn't get my hook in. Okay, but when I see my opponent go to get up and I physically pin the leg, when he goes to move it now, it's so difficult, and it's relatively easy for me now to get that hook in. Okay, whenever I have an opportunity to chase an opponent who's recovering from a breakdown of any kind in any scramble situation, whenever I have an opportunity to pin his leg with my shin to facilitate the entry of my foot hook, I'll take it. Let's look at another example. Common method of guard passing, leg dragging. Okay, knees up. From any given leg drag type situation where I move on my training partner and we come down and pin our training partner, a very common reaction is no one wants to turn into me, because that gives up a pin, okay, and I'll get passing points. So what so many of our opponents do is they turn to come up to turtle position. What am I doing? I'm sitting on the hamstring, and as a result, it's such an easy thing to transition my foot directly in as a hook, and from here, we're back in business. So, once again, facing in this direction, leg drag situation, facing this way. From here, we saw this idea that from any given leg drag type situation, as I come here and crowd my training partner and he turns away, look, I sit on the hamstring, my shin down on top of it, body contact maximal. When he goes to get up, he's slowed down by the influence of my left leg. As he fights up to his base, look how that facilitates the entry of my right foot. Then when we seize the opposite arm, we have the diagonal control we need, so that when we fall to the mat, we're ready to go. This simple action of slowing my opponent's legs down by using one leg to pin my opponent's leg so the other leg can hook is a hallmark of good back control jiu-jitsu fighters. Typically, they will use two legs to restrain one of their opponent's legs and establish their first hook. Most beginners in the sport do almost nothing to constrain their opponent's legs. They just throw hooks in. Now, at beginner level, that can work, okay, but it's not going to cut it at championship level. Don't be satisfied with what works at beginner level. Be satisfied with what works at championship level. Regardless of whatever skill level you are, that mindset will make you a better athlete. Let's go through this again. Total position. We'll demonstrate it now out of a simple breakdown. We've seen that off that initial breakdown, when I work in here, my opponent goes to get up, look at my knee position, right on the tailbone, so that one of my legs is already, in this case it's my left leg, is controlling the movement of my opponent's right leg. As he goes to get up, it slows him down and greatly facilitates the entry of my right hook, so that when we fall over, we're in a winning position. Same situation, facing the head this way, leg drag situation. We move in on our training partner, and from any given leg drag type movement, if my opponent turns into me, he gives me the pin. So most competitive athletes don't want to give up pinning points, and so they start turning away. Look how my knee is in the tailbone, he goes to get up, and from here that greatly facilitates the passage of my foot in as a hook. Okay, these work so well because we have maximal body contact with our training partner. He's in a non-athletic position, trying to get up to an athletic position, and as a result, there's no danger of us throwing a hook in and him just standing up on us and throwing us off. This is the quintessential idea of how we can safely and effectively use foot entries into hooks. Okay? Done in this way, foot entries are an incredibly valuable and useful part of your repertoire for establishing back position. Done poorly, where I just throw hooks in, it's a disaster waiting to happen. Okay? That's why, as a general rule for beginners in the sport, I generally counsel knee entries. Knee entries, let's face the other way, this way. Knee entries generally make it an easier task for me to use two of my legs to control one of my opponent's legs. So two legs establish one hook. Okay. As a general rule, it's relatively simple for me to use two legs to pinch around my training partner's legs like so, and from here we hook in. Now two of my legs, left and right, are controlling one of my opponent's legs, his right leg, in a way which means that as I pull him down, he's caught, one of his legs is caught between two of mine. So I'm using the 2-on-1 principle on my opponent's legs. Two of my legs establish one hook, just like so. Okay, that's always something that elite athletes want to use when they go to establish their back position. Typically, tyros and beginners in the sport tend to just throw a hook in, rather than using 2-on-1 control. When it's time to enter with the feet, we use the same principle, slightly different operation. But the idea is the same. Two of my legs to establish one hook. We've seen this idea off an initial breakdown, like so. As my opponent goes to get up, look how my knee is on top of his. Okay? So my left leg is involved in the establishment as he goes to work. Okay, pinch. The left leg is involved in the establishment of the right hook. Both of my legs are locked around his knee. When he goes to move, I'm wedging two legs around one. And as a result, the transition to a hook is extraordinarily easy. I cannot overstate the importance of this distinction. Beginners in the sport throw hooks in. Experts in the sport use 2-on-1 control to establish a hook with control. Two legs establish one hook. Use this principle and you'll find your ability to enter with both knee and foot goes up dramatically. Please understand, I'm a 51-year-old man with a hip replacement and about to get a knee replacement. If I can enter with my foot in this fashion, it will be extraordinarily easy for you. Once again, we get our break. Let's go this way. Let's understand that when we first get our breakdown on our training partner, I'm not a person gifted with flexibility. On the contrary, I'm the exact opposite. I have a hip replacement, I'm about to get a knee replacement. But if I use this simple methodology of the breakdown, and as my opponent goes to get up, I pinch two knees around my opponent. Okay? It requires no flexibility on my part when I use this 2-on-1 control principle to simply move my legs and fit my hook in effortlessly. Then diagonal control, and wherever we go now, we've got the breakdown into a winning position. If someone in my condition can do this, imagine what someone in your condition can do. Okay, we're looking at the idea of entering into our training partner's back. So far, the talk that we've made with regards to entry backs has been dominated by the idea of knee and foot entries, and those account for the absolute majority of the best entries that we see in modern day competition, not just amongst my athletes, but for athletes in general. But they're not the only methods of entering into the legs. There are a whole host of entering our legs as hooks into our opponents and establishing the rear mount that don't involve foot or knee entries. Probably the broadest category of alternatives are rolling entries, and there are different ways we can roll our opponent, establish hooks that don't involve entering with a knee or a foot first. Okay, the first rolling entry we're going to look at is probably the simplest and probably the most commonly seen. It's usually done out of a seatbelt situation. We'll just move further back away from the camera, and we'll turn to an angle just like so. Okay, the idea behind a rolling entry is that we're going to do some of the things that I cautioned you against doing, which is to generate high amplitude and movement. Okay, as a general rule, in top level competition, typically it's safer to use low amplitude movements to enter into the hooks. Okay, there's less that can go wrong because there's less momentum of the two bodies, there's less danger of slippage and the two athletes breaking apart, etc., etc. But you know, let's not kid ourselves. They can definitely work. Done in the right way, they can definitely work. Here's what I believe is probably the most high percentage, the most commonly used method of using a rolling entry, where instead of using my knee and feet to enter, I use the momentum of a roll to create hook opportunity and get to my opponent's back. As I said, we'll start out of a seatbelt grip. From a situation where we have a strong seatbelt on my training partner, I'm going to use my seatbelt in a significantly different fashion. Remember, the seatbelt is one grip, but it can be used in many different ways. Very important, okay? I can use a seatbelt to pull people. I can use a seatbelt to push people. And I can use a seatbelt to put weight over the head and roll people. And that's what we're going to look at now. From a situation where I have a seatbelt on my training partner, instead of having my chest and back away from my opponent, my chest and head away from my opponent, I'm going to take my shoulder and I'm going to roll my shoulder over the top of my training partner's head. So as my opponent's in a tight, compacted turtle position, this is the perfect time to hit this kind of move. We take our shoulder, we raise the shoulder, and we put our shoulder over our training partner's head. Then I put my own head down on the floor and my knees come up off the mat. Now in one motion I take my leg off the floor, in this case it's my left leg, the rear leg, and I simply turn my body through and roll my opponent like so. Because there was momentum behind the roll, my opponent's knees separated from the chest. And as a result, I can quickly throw my foot across my training partner's body and go into post rear mounts, body triangles, etc., etc. And from here, we're in a perfect position to go on the attack. Let's have a look at this again. Make your body a little stronger. So, not from the start, but when we hit the move. From here, we go in on our training partner and lock up. We get that seatbelt in place. As the seatbelt locks, I like to do a trick with this particular version of the seatbelt. I'll say this again because it's very, very important. Seatbelt is one grip, there's many different varieties of it. If we sit up, I can lock a seatbelt with my hands on the far side of my opponent, or I can lock a seatbelt on the near side. When I hit the move that we're about to look at, I typically like to take my far side arm and come through all the way so I lock on the near side of the neck instead of the traditional far side. Okay, so my opponent's down in a defensive position and lock up on the near side just like so. Now I move my body around to the side, I put my shoulder on top of his head. That's the crucial component. Look how I move my shoulder and the shoulder dominates the crown of the head. I put my own head on the floor. As my body turns, we now get a whiplash effect as my leg high legs over. It takes my opponent through and into a position where we can easily go on the attack from behind. The idea is to create sufficient momentum that my opponent's knees separate from the chest. Okay? If the roll is done in a convincing fashion, it'll often do that. So one more time. We start off behind our training partner, we go in, we get that initial seatbelt on our training partner, we move around to the side and we position our hands and our shoulder. Then the head comes through and I go into this high tripod position. From here we high leg and physically throw our training partner into a position where we can go on the attack. Now here we looked at a situation where the knees went away from the chest. You're going to deal with more and more disciplined opponents who know that knees away from the chest is an open invitation to hooks. And even when you use this method and put considerable momentum on them, they'll land with their knees in close to their body. Then we're going to have to make a transition to a crab ride and then establish the hooks. So we have an opponent in a turtle position. We want to break them down to their buttocks. We'd love to get hooks in, but now we have an experienced opponent who has seen this move before and goes with the roll and keeps their knee to their chest. So we go in, we establish that initial seat belt. We're locking it here on the near side of the neck. I come around the corner, put my head down, and as I roll my training partner through, he keeps his knees in close. And so there's no way I'm going to establish hooks. Okay? In these situations, we get our feet in behind our training partner and we start lengthening legs like so. So when his feet are in contracted, look, I use my foot and I lengthen a leg. And as a result, I can easily pass my foot to the inside. Keep your knees up tight. Now I fall across the opposite way and we find ourselves in a position where we can go into our regular attacking sequences in the ways that we saw earlier in the video. So if we do roll our opponent through and his knees stay tight in a disciplined fashion to his chest, don't despair. You can just use a crab ride to place the hooks in after the fact. So once again, we move in on a training partner. We establish that initial seatbelt grip, and we end up behind our opponent but unable to bring the knees away from the chest. From here, my feet come in close and I place my foot in behind his hook, make a strong leg. No matter how strong his leg in this position, my leg can always extend his away. Okay, and as a result, we're in good position now to start throwing hooks across our training partner's body and go into our various forms of attack. Now, this is one form of roll which generates momentum and allows us to get hooks in. This was done from a seatbelt grip. Let's look at a very different way of rolling now, done not from a seatbelt, just sitting up, but rather from double underhooks with either a body lock or even open hands. Okay, the grip should be high underneath my training partner's chest. Okay, and this will create conditions where we can do a roll not out to one of my opponent's sides, but a roll directly lined up with my training partner. This will confer tremendous momentum, which throws my opponent through and offers great opportunities to go into various forms of back attack, whether it be with hooks in or a cross-body ride or any other form of the attacking methods we've looked at. Let's move back a little bit further away from the camera and show the kind of movement involved here. We're going to start off behind our training partner, and this time we're a little more lined up with our training partner than previously. Okay, so we've got a slight angle but nothing crazy. Now, from this position, we went in to fight for a seatbelt, but my opponent hand fights and prevents me from getting the hand in front and locking my hands. In these situations, I will often counsel my students to bring the hand back and go into the one area they can't hand fight, which is the area behind their arms. Okay. Remember, if I go in front of their hands and shoulders, that's where they can hand fight me. If I get shut out, then I just release and I come back in the one area they can't stop, which is behind the arms and armpits. And then from here, we're going to lock our hands. I'm going to recommend for now a palm to palm grip, where my two hands lock palm to palm, just like so. Okay. No thumbs, just locking in like so. So I get shut out from the seatbelt, I go in behind, and my hands lock. Now, I'm going to put my body into a high tripod over my opponent. So I'm going to drive my body weight forward. I'm going to put my head down on the floor, and I'm going to come up into a high tripod. From the high tripod position, I'm going to bring my body up as my feet leave the mat. We're going to start to develop an ability to bring our feet up and over our training partner's body like so. Now from here, I'm going to throw my body weight forward and send my opponent over. As a result, we're in perfect position to hook legs and go into situations, for example, like a cross-body ride. And from here, we're ready to attack. Once again, this time we'll do it going in this direction. Let's go right here somewhere. From a situation where we're behind our training partner, we go in, we can't get a seatbelt, so we go in behind and we lock our hands. The first requirement here is we get into a high tripod. So my head goes forward, move your hand from inwards. From here, I bring my body into a high tripod like so. From the high tripod, I want to create a condition where my body goes up. As my body rises, we create a situation where from here I throw my body first and his body second. So we want my body to go, and only when my body goes does his follow. And as a result, we're in perfect position to get hooks in and go on the attack. The important thing here is that we want to create a situation where I go first and he follows. Don't make this common mistake. People just hook and just try to pull him and this happens. It's a disaster. You have to create a situation where there's separation between your body and his, so that as you have the two athletes connected, one athlete goes first and then pulls the other one with him, not two athletes together. Okay, so we start off with our training partner. We go in and we get the high body lock. I bring my body into a high tripod, and from here I just throw my body through and break him down to the mat. Now we're in the perfect position to fight for seatbelts, hooks, etc., and go into our winning positions. This would be another example of using a rolling entry to enter hooks, etc., on my opponent. It doesn't involve the entry of the knee or the foot first. We're looking at the idea of entering into the rear mounted position. We just looked at rolling entries, which featured our upper bodies connected to our opponent's upper body, my chest to his back. And as a result, we were able to roll through, generate momentum, and then throw in hooks and establish the hooks. That's one form of rolling entry, and a very important one. There's another completely different form of rolling entry, also equally important. This is the idea of using my legs to hook into my opponent's legs, generate a roll, and end up on my opponent's back. This method of using my legs to enter the back is a very, very important one for your development. These are particularly good methods of entering the back out of scramble situations. I'll show them out of set situations, but throughout your career you'll be able to use these, particularly in scramble situations, to work your way to your opponent's back and get hooks in. They tend to have a very disorienting effect upon your opponent. They get spun around like a washing machine, and then they wake up and they're 2 hooks are in. Very, very effective and very useful in a wide variety of contexts. Let's look at the first one out of a bottom side control position, top side control position, the down side control. From here, let's talk about the idea of a reverse underhook, because that's going to be the precursor to what we need to get this move to work. Normally when we talk about an underhook, it's my left arm underneath my opponent's right arm. And if you go on YouTube and look up underhook, you're going to see something like this: my left versus his right. A reverse underhook is a situation where my right goes under his right, like so. Okay, so that my arm is under his, but you can see it's not in any stretch of the imagination a normal underhook. It's completely reversed. Okay, now the function of a reverse underhook is not to control the upper body; it's to expose the back of my opponent's hips and lower back, and as a result, we're going to be able to get rolling entries. What I want to do is create a situation where I take my opponent's legs from a symmetrical square position, and I want to create a top leg and a bottom leg. Okay, that means I'm going to have to move his legs in a certain kind of way. Now, the only thing I've really got to move his legs at this point is my hand. And let's be honest, your hand is never going to be as strong as your opponent's legs. So I'm going to use my hand to just smack his legs over and pass it to my own leg. I don't want situations where my hands are fighting the strength of his legs. If I'm going to fight the strength of his legs, I'm going to do it with my own legs. Okay, so we're going to start in a position like so, and I'm just going to take my hand, and in one motion I'm just going to surprise my opponent and create a top leg. So that now we have a top leg and a bottom leg. Okay, I take his top leg and I hook it right there at the Achilles tendon with my foot. So when he tries to pull his foot back, he's not fighting against my hand, he's fighting against my legs. Moreover, I'm controlling him at the end of the lever, all the way down by the Achilles tendon, so it's hard for him to retract his leg. It's not going to be easy. Okay. Again, what I don't want to do is this: I don't want to grab a leg, move it, and then try to hold a leg with my hand. If he retracts the leg, it's impossible. My hand's not that strong. Okay. So all I do is I prepare my body, I position myself, and in one quick motion, I whip the leg over and I step my foot over it. So when he tries to retract it, he's not fighting my hand strength, he's fighting my leg strength. And my leg is positioned at the end of the lever, so I'm in a mechanically sound position. Now I'm currently on my side. What I need to do now is come up to my knees and hook my right hook in. Okay. From this position, I lock an outside scorpion on my training partner's ankle. I'm in the perfect position now to pin my training partner's ankle, so both legs are controlled, and then all I do is I just put my elbow inside my training partner's knee and roll my training partner through. As a result, we end up in very good attacking position. From here, obviously, we have the cross-body ride. That's an obvious movement from this position. Or from here, I can put a hand on my training partner's hip and a hand here on my training partner's neck. When he tries to move away from me, that hand doesn't look like much, but it's a very, very controlling grip. Now, from this position, it's a simple thing for us to put our foot as a hook underneath our training partner's leg, generate movement, and find ourselves back in one of our favorite attacking positions, ready to establish our back attacks. So once again, facing this way, we start off by establishing the one prerequisite we need. That's the reverse underhook. If we don't have that, none of the other stuff's going to work. So from any given side position, we go through and establish that reverse underhook. And we turn and face towards our training partner's legs. I take a hold of my training partner's leg and create a top leg and a bottom leg. From that top leg situation, I hook and I control his leg with my leg, never fighting the strength of his legs with my hands. Now, as I come back up to my base, look how once again the great principle of controlling two of my legs control one of his. And as a result, I'm able to rock like so. Two of my legs on one of his. That same principle that we saw earlier in this back entry system. Now, from here, we catch a hold of our training partner's opposite foot. Both legs are now controlled. As a result, I can easily pass my elbow through and hit a simple disorienting roll that puts my hand underneath my training partner's neck and gives us good control of hip and head. When he goes to move away from me, it's shockingly difficult. And as a result, it's a simple thing for us now to turn our training partner and go into winning positions behind our training partner's back. Once again, this time head facing this way. From a situation where we start off with a reverse underhook. We start off in a fairly conventional side pin. We go through and establish the reverse underhook just like so. Okay. Now from here we need a top leg and a bottom leg, so we reach across our training partner. I never try to have my head on my opponent's center line and grab a leg. If he makes a strong leg, you'll never move it from here. Okay. We always need our head coming across just like so. Okay. Now from here, with my head in this position, I just quickly move and get the top leg and bottom leg created. I step over the top of my training partner's foot. As I return to my knees, my hook goes in so that I have a pinching effect around my training partner's leg. When he goes to move the leg, two of my legs control one of his. As a result, it's an easy thing for me to roll and control my training partner like so. When he goes to move around from here, it's an excellent control of hips and head. From here, simple thing to move our opponent and go into a winning position. So that would be one classic example of rolling into the back position. Let's look now at variations on this theme. Let's look now from mounted position. As I find myself in the mounted position, probably the single most common escape to the mounted position is the good time and tested elbow escape. The most commonly seen variations of the elbow escape involve my opponent turning onto his side and trapping my foot. Once he traps my foot, he pushes out and traps my knee, then he moves in the other direction, brings the second knee through, and puts me back in some form of guard. Okay, it's a move that I'm sure all of you are very familiar with. It's probably one of the first moves you get taught in the sport of jiu-jitsu and one you'll use almost every day you're training. It goes in a very predictable sequence. Starts with a foot, goes to a knee, and then goes to the other side of the body. What we do is we surrender our foot to our opponent. So we're mounted on our training partner, and from here I see him turning into an elbow escape. I willingly give him the foot. Okay, as he takes the foot, I take my knee and I move back and center my body over my training partner's hips. I take my arm and punch through as a reverse underhook. Now I face back towards my training partner and I physically lift his foot out so that he no longer has the figure of four. I catch the second foot, elbow goes inside, and once again we catch hip and head and find ourselves in the perfect position to go on the attack and establish our favorite back position attacks. Facing the other direction, we're here working with our training partner. I deliberately offer my foot to my opponent. How do I do that? Go back. I physically take my foot off the floor. So it's like a bait. It's so easy for my opponent to hit that elbow escape now. Now from this position, I reposition my hands and I backstep so that I'm centered directly over my training partner's hips. Regardless of how my opponent is pushing on me, that's going to make it easy for me to punch through to a reverse underhook. Now, I like in these circumstances to uncross the feet. It's not essential that you do that, but I like to do it. I uncross my training partner's feet and catch the second foot. My elbow goes behind my training partner's knee, and as a result, we easily pass our opponent over and capture head and hip and go into potentially winning position. Okay, so that would be a good example of using it from a mounted position. Now let's look at one of the most common positions in the sport of jiu-jitsu, half guard top. From a half guard top scenario that's facing this direction, half guard top, my opponent's working from this position. We're going to start off by tripoding and walking across our training partner's body. I'm going to put my hand on the hip, make a strong lock on my legs, and put my elbow inside my training partner's knee so they can slip my knee free and drive across into a kind of a quasi-mounted position. Let's move this way. So there's a sense in which I'm mounted because I have two knees on the floor, but I'm not really mounted because he still has my foot. Okay, from this kind of quasi-mounted situation, it's not a difficult thing for us to hit that same back step that we just saw. I bring my leg back on through, I punch through to a reverse underhook. My general preference here is to unhook my opponent's feet, but if that should prove difficult to do, then I'll simply hook my opponent's opposite foot and hit that same roll through that we've been looking at. From here, head and hips, and we're in a good attacking position. Once again, from half guard top, my opponent can have the underhook, doesn't matter. He locks high on my legs. I'm going to put my hand on the hip and my elbow inside his knee. Okay, as he holds on tight, I'm just going to push with my elbow and turn my knee so that I can drive my knee to the floor. And we end up in this interesting position. Okay, there's a sense in which you are mounted because you do have two knees on the floor, but there's an obvious sense in which you're not mounted because he still has your foot. It's kind of quasi-mounted position. We sit back over our training partner's hips. If he's pushing on my hips, I just go through underneath my opponent. If not, I just put my hand into a reverse underhook situation. From here, I grab hold of my training partner's opposite foot, and from here, a simple roll will take us through. Look how that rolling action exposes my training partner's back, hips, and head. Now from here, we go on through and into our favorite attacking positions. These rolling entrances, which are possible in so many different scenarios in which we find ourselves in the sport of jiu-jitsu, are a fantastic way of supplementing your ability, especially out of scramble situations as you gain in skill, to take your opponent's back, establish your hooks, and get into the winning positions to utilize the systems that we saw earlier in the series. We're looking at the idea of establishing our hooks on an opponent and breaking them down into situations where we can go into the various forms of submission attacks that we saw earlier in this instructional video. A very specialized position, which is becoming increasingly important in both submission grappling, especially at ADCC because of the point structure, and also in jiu-jitsu in general, is the so-called 4-point position, where my opponent is no longer in a turtle position, but rather comes up so that they have 4 points of contact with the floor, okay, just like so, okay, so they have no elbows on the mat and no knees on the mat. Let's face in this direction. So this would be a good example of a 4-point position. This radically changes how I go to stay on my opponent's back. You can see what the fundamental problem here is. My opponent's back slopes down to the floor, and this creates a lot of problems for traditional methods of imposing control on my opponent and taking the back. So for example, a seat belt, which is such a successful way of controlling our opponent with upper body grips when their knees and elbows are on the floor, is a disaster against the 4-point position. When I try to lock a seat belt, my opponent just has to walk backwards, and there's a problem here of slippage where you just fall off your opponent. All they have to do is shrug their head and the seat belt just slips off because of the angle of the back. Okay, so as I try to hold a seat belt here and they just walk backwards, you just inevitably slip off your opponent. Many skilled athletes in the bottom position know this, and they will use this against people who put them in a seatbelt. They'll tripod up in this position, go to 4-point, and just shrug their opponents away. In addition, it's kind of not always clear how you're going to throw hooks in here and stabilize people. The problem is that traditional approaches to the back are symmetrical. They line me up with my opponent's spine. So for example, if I had hooks in on my training partner in this position, a traditional method of going square on to my opponent in this position, if he starts walking backwards on me here, the symmetrical position in my body means it continues walking backwards, I start losing hooks, and you see people lose the position and have to scramble back and work their way out of there. So 4-point position presents real challenges for the traditional methods of controlling the back. Even things like the crucifix don't work well. Let's face towards the camera now. When I have my seatbelt grip in here, even if I'm behind my training partner's two arms, traditional methods of crucifix don't work well here. It's awkward for me to place my foot and hook. I have to use the rear leg. I have to use different versions of crucifixes to attack. So the problem here is that the 4-point position tends to be highly resistant to traditional methods of controlling the back and breaking people down to go into our attacks. we need to have better methods of working against this interesting position. So let's have a look at some of those. The one that I want to focus on the most with you is the idea of what we call an asymmetrical rear mounted position. Okay, let's take a standing position. From a standing position where I knock my training partner down to a 4-point. Let's say, for example, I have a body lock, I put my leg in, bump my training partner down to 4-point position. Okay, the first thing I do here is I start off, as we so often do, with the idea of 2 legs pinching around one of my training partner's legs. Okay, I can't be naive and leave a leg out here for my opponent to roll into my legs and go for leg attacks. So I just keep a knee pinch just on like so. Now the first and most important thing, when we work with a 4-point position, we never go over under. Okay, traditionally, just standing up, traditionally we get taught in jiu-jitsu to go over under and lock in, like so, the seatbelt grip and variations of that. Okay, now that's fine when we're down on the mat. Against 4-point, we've seen that's a disaster. Okay, so when we work against 4-point, we always work with 2 arms behind my training partner's 2 arms to get around the problem of slippage. Okay, if I go over and he walks backwards, you slip right off. Okay, when I stay behind 2 arms, I'll stay to him. When he goes to move away, I'm stuck to his body. Okay, so that's our first insight. When we work against a 4-point position, we stay behind 2 arms and we don't go over under. Standing back up. So we've seen from the idea from a rear body lock on our training partner, we put our knee in and we bump our training partner down and we pinch around one of our training partner's legs. We stay behind the 2 arms, okay? Now I'm going to throw the far hook in first, the thing that I told you not to do when we were down on the floor. Why is it safe for us to do that? Because the weight's over the hands. He's already up on his, in a 4-point position, so the question of him standing up is moot at this point. He's already stood up. Okay, all we got to do is keep weight on the hands. So from this position, I'm going to throw my far hook in, and we're going to take a very particular kind of rear mount, an asymmetrical rear mount. Okay, instead of being lined up with square hooks, we're going to throw our hook in on the far side. And we're going to place the hooks in so that they're asymmetrical, so that I have a left hook which faces out like so. The left hook is shallow, and the right hook is very deep. I knee deep with the right hook and ankle deep with the left hook, and as a result I can hang off my opponent's body with no hands. I put my arm in behind his arm and I bring my head down next to his head, so there's tremendous weight on his hands. Now I take my elbow to his wrist and I bring his 2 wrists together and I break him down to the floor, and as a result we're in a winning position. We're going to do the same move facing towards the camera. So let's move back a little. We start off in a standing rear body lock, standing position. We bump our training partner down to the mat. Okay. From here, we put 2 arms in behind our training partner's arms. Now, as my head goes forward, my far hook goes in as a shallow hook, and my near side hook goes in as a deep hook. 1 arm in here, 1 arm in behind. My head over his head. So when he goes to stand up, there's so much weight, it's impossible. Now I bring my elbow to his wrist. I can hang off my opponent's body to a degree where I can look at his face. Then you know you've got good control here. We hook and break him down. Okay, facing this way. So, standing over here, we start off the rear body lock and we bump our training partner down to the mat. Okay, 2 arms in behind, like so. Good control of our training partner's body. There's a big space here. Let's take advantage of that space. I take my foot, hook, and we've got a long hook and a short hook. As a result, with 2 arms in behind, I've got weight over his hands. Now, I slide down to the wrist with my elbow, and I physically pick his wrist up and move it towards his other wrist. And as a result, we get a perfect breakdown onto the floor and a winning position. I'm just going to show that one facing away from the camera so you get used to the idea of a long hook and a short hook. Remember, if I have symmetrical hooks as we would down on the floor, it's very easy for my opponent to simply slip out of the rear mounted position. So from a rear body lock, we've seen the idea of a trip that puts our opponent down to the mat. Okay, 2 arms in behind, the left foot goes in shallow and the right hook goes in deep, so that even with no hands I can hang off my training partner's body weight, and as a result I can easily put my head in a winning position to break him down to the floor and get control of my opponent. This is the long hook, short hook method of controlling my opponent, and we used an elbow to wrist method of breaking him down. Let's look at the same move, but a very different method of breaking down a very strong opponent, the power half Nelson. Same scenario. We have a standing rear body lock. We go in on our training partner and bump him down to the floor. From here we go long hook, short hook, just as we did previously. Chest comes down, two arms behind, hook goes in, and we've got the long hook and the short hook. This time I physically can't move his wrist, too strong. So I come up and I put a bar across the back of his neck. I bring my hands through and I lock palm to palm. I push my opponent's head down to the floor, and we get the perfect breakdown all the way to the mat, and one of our favorite attacking positions. Once again, this time facing towards the camera, coming back. We start off standing rear body lock, we go through and bump our training partner down to the mat. Catching, two arms behind his arms, never going over under. That's a disaster in a 4-point position. Okay. We bring our foot all the way through and hook, long hook and short hook. I try to come down to the elbow, not working, too strong. We come up, we put the bar across the head, and we lock our hands palm to palm. I push the head under the armpit, and we roll through into one of our favorite attacking positions. Once again, facing in this direction this time. From a standing rear body lock, we go through, catch, and drive straight down to the mat. We lock in, we bring the head forward, and as a result, we get the long hook and the short hook. Now, hand comes forward, bar comes over, hands lock, and we drive the head not straight forward, but underneath our training partner's armpit. And as a result, it's a relatively simple thing to go into a winning position. Now, let's provide an acid test of whether or not you're doing a good job with that long hook and short hook. That's your ability to use your legs alone to hold your body weight without the use of your hands. So we'll face in this direction. From that body lock, we drive our training partner down. Body weight goes forward, finding the short hook, goes in and lock. I have the short hook and the long hook. If I can bring my face in front of his and look at my opponent, you know you're doing a good job with your legs. Okay? No hands required. Okay? And from here, I can bring myself back into those winning positions that we talked about earlier. Okay? That's your acid test as to whether or not your legs are working efficiently in a way which will hold you on in a competitive context in the standing position against this 4-point position. We've seen a tremendous amount of material concerning the back attack system, which I teach to my students and which they've had so much success with over recent years in international level competition. The keynote themes that I want you taking away is the idea that in Jiu-Jitsu these days, there's a tremendous number of athletes who are highly skilled at taking their opponent's back, maintaining the back, but there are significantly fewer who are highly adept in finishing from the back. The central purpose of this video series is the idea of finishes from the back. It was designed to show a systematic approach. The keynote to that system is the idea of a central system, which we call the straitjacket system, where it's designed to pin my opponent's defensive arms down in ways which greatly facilitate the use of rear naked strangles. We also saw a new mechanical approach to the rear naked strangle itself. Around that main system were a group of auxiliary systems which have a very different focus. Instead of taking one move, the rear naked strangle, and trying to push it through one vulnerable part of your opponent's body, the neck, the auxiliary systems are designed to spread the attacks out over the whole body. And we saw a range of auxiliary systems that did exactly that. Then we finished with the idea of getting to these winning positions on the back. And we saw some critical principles which my athletes use, and many other great athletes too, to get to the back positions that will make these finishes and the systems that they're bound within work. and I'm sure that in a short time they'll start working for you too. Thank you.